that I would be a liar if I was to say it to you.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Lakewood City Council, Lakewood, Colorado, on August 28th, 2017 at 7 p.m. to order. Will the clerk please call roll?
Paul.
Here.
Coop.
Here.
Wickman. Gutwein.
Here.
Franks. Harrison. Royball.
Here.
Vincent.
Here.
Abel.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Shakti.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Cool. Thanks. Welcome. I'd like to thank you all for coming out tonight, taking part in your local government, and for those who may be tuning in online or via Channel 8. If you do have a cell phone on in chambers, I'd ask if you could maybe put that on silent. And if you'd please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, stay standing for a moment of silent prayer. And I'd just like to give just a special shout out to our friends in Houston and wish them the best as they're dealing with quite a catastrophe.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. So we're going to just move things a little bit. I'm going to ask our clerk to read item 6 into the record. That way, for folks who might be here and they don't want to sit through the two presentations, we'll have an opportunity. So if the clerk could please read item 6, which is now item 4, into the record.
The citizen-initiated ordinance limiting residential growth to no more than 1% per year by implementing a permit allocation system for new dwelling units and by requiring city council approval of allocations for projects of 40 or more units.
Okay, well, thank you. So I will officially pull this from the agenda tonight, and I'll turn that over to Ms. Greer to explain why.
Yes, we received a protest on this initiative. And according to our the Lakewood Municipal Code, City Council cannot act on this while there's a pending protest or appeal.
All right, thank you very much. Will the clerk please read is item 5 into the record.
Item 5, presentation, Metro West Housing Solutions.
I'd like to call down Ms. Tammy Fisher, Executive Director. Thank you. This is something that's been on Council's radar for some time. And this is actually an opportunity to hear about Metro West and what they provide and kind of a state of what's going on.
Great. Thank you for having me here tonight. Let me get this set up.
Yeah, I know it's still after. We just wanted these people.
Well, thank you for having me here tonight. I'm Tammy Fisher, the Director of Metro West Housing Solutions, and I thank you for inviting me to come here and talk about Metro West, one of my favorite subjects. See if I can do this right here.
It's been that long?
There we go. Yes. 22 years ago, I learned how to use this podium. Well, first of all, just a little background. The history of Metro West, which I'm sure you all are aware of, this was in response to a Colorado state statute. And we were created in 1974 by a resolution of the city of Lakewood in response for the need of affordable housing, what they always used to say, safe, decent, and affordable housing in your community. We've been around, obviously, for a long time. We've changed a lot as the community needs grew and as, just the world has changed. We began to broaden our services and became, a developer as well, and also a service provider of resident services. In 2008, we purchased our own headquarters, our own office building at 575 Union, and we rebranded our name to Metro West Housing Solutions, which actually better reflects really who we are, because times have changed since 1974, when housing authorities, people thought that had to do with public housing. So also in 2008, we sold all of our public housing units here in Lakewood. And we were able to use that as seed money to build more quality, up-to-date, better located housing. So the city of Lakewood does not have any public housing buildings. We're very proud that we've been deemed a high performer by HUD ever since I've been around, and that's very exciting to us because that's a high standard to meet. We've also received several national awards for administrative quality of our housing authority, and we're very proud of that. So what we provide, these words I know you've heard tossed around a lot, attainable, affordable, low-income housing, all those. What we really focus on is attainable housing, because attainable housing is for everybody at every income level. Whether you're making $9.30 an hour minimum wage or you're making $100,000 a year or more, attainable housing as defined by HUD is never paying more than 30% of your gross income, including utilities, towards housing. Most and all housing programs usually refer to that 30% threshold. So that is what attainable housing is, and that's what I'm referring to tonight. And there's just a few little factoids here. I'm not going to read all the slides to you. The median home price in Lakewood is 38% higher than the national average. The median home value in Lakewood, according to the Board of Realtors, is $340,000. That seems low to me almost for Lakewood. The median rent is 5% higher than the national average. And our local demand, actually 43.6% of households in Lakewood would income qualify for the tax credit affordable housing, which is the low-income housing tax credit, and I'm not going to go through that because I sat through the presentation also for your housing study on the very thorough education of low-income housing tax credits. What that means is if you were at 80% of the area median income, a family of four would make about $67,100. At 50% of the area median income, a family of four makes about $42,000, and they would qualify for a unit in the low-income housing tax credit program. Oops, there we go. So how do we provide this attainable housing? We do this by being our tagline, more than a roof. It's just not about providing a house. We are developers, and many of you are very familiar with our properties, and I'll show you some pictures of those later on. But we really believe in providing housing that is quality for families, that are in a good location for them, that's close to transportation, close to amenities, and are very sustainable. We do this through the low-income housing tax credit and through private equity in our community. We have received in these properties over 32 different national awards since 2005, so we're very proud of the product that we provide in Lakewood and to the communities. We're also a service provider, as I mentioned. We believe in working with the families and the seniors and the individuals that live in our properties. We want them to feel like it's their community. We want to help them find a job if they don't have one. We want to help them stay in school. We want to help them find their basic needs if they need food. Whatever it is, we have resident services coordinators on site at all of our properties. They work with them individually. We give a variety of classes. It's very much building a community, and we find that what has happened is that people stay. They feel like they belong there, and it's a community. So we have very, very low turnover. We're also our own property managers, and we provide our own maintenance. We're long-term owners of our properties, and we want them to be well taken care of at our high quality, and we want them to be managed at our high quality. And we do that by doing it ourselves. We're a really proud partner of the Crime-Free Housing Program here with the police department, and we're very proud of the safe communities that we provide for these families. We also administer the Housing Choice Voucher Program. There's an explanation there directly out of HUD's words on what it is, but in simple terms, people qualify for a voucher. They take that voucher to any private landlord in the community. They again pay no more than 30% of their income, and HUD pays a difference between what the rent actually is. And so we have payments from HUD going out directly to those landlords. This is just kind of a little snapshot of Metro West that we like to use to help people understand who we are. And these are our latest statistics from 2017. We have 1,255 units throughout our communities that we own and manage here in Lakewood. We have $273 million in assets and properties in Lakewood. We're funded for 1,411 vouchers. However, we only have 1,700 that we are being utilized because of funding cuts and because we don't have enough money to reach that gap between someone's income and the high rents that are out there. Over $10 million every year is paid to private landlords, and there's about 400 of them, for those housing choice vouchers. This is a fun fact, over almost $4 million worth of square feet of land and property in our buildings in Lakewood. Our budget basically is like anybody else's. Our properties have to run on the rent that they get. And so rent comes in, expenses go out, they pay for the entire property and the staff and administration, and anything left over, we invest in more affordable housing. So it's pretty simple. It's just like the city. We can't spend more than we have coming in. Down below, you'll see that we have 13 communities. Some of those communities have more than one building on them. You might be familiar with Creekside. It has 2 different properties that were developed at different times. And then we have 2,421 individuals, that's adults and children, that live in those 1,255 units. That does not include the voucher program. And then Metro West has 71 folks. We have 71 employees. We started out, about 15 years ago with 22. And because of our developments and our growth, we now have 71 employees. So where are we? You probably drive by us all the time. We do have, like I said, 13 different communities. Down below, you'll see that these are the neighborhoods that we're near or in or around. And like I said, we're very proud to be, I think a very beautiful addition to a community. We try and blend in with the community. We try and enhance the community in the neighborhood that we're in. We're also very proud that we're a partner, like I said, with the Crime-Free Housing Program. And below are a couple of quotes from our police department that we're really proud of. Metro West is a top-notch organization that we wish other management companies would follow. That's by Dutch Smith from the Lakewood Police Department, which I'm sure many of you know. I have nothing but great things to say about Metro West. I wish the rest of our property management companies were that way. So we have a great relationship with them, and we're very proud of that. So who we serve? Well, our community is comprised of, your neighbors, people that you know, people that you run into in your daily lives, running errands at the grocery store and restaurants, when you get your tires changed, the seniors that you see out and about, recent graduates, working parents, the general workforce. We do serve a lot of veterans, and of course we have many children in our programs as well. I don't think I need to tell you, you all know this because you all read the news. This is a challenge to be providing attainable housing right now in most any community. We're focused on Lakewood, and so this is a real challenge. And these folks here are finding a challenge to find affordable housing where they work. We looked at job postings, like Craigslist and the City of Lakewood published salaries, the classifieds, because the folks that we serve are these folks. These are real jobs. These are real starting salaries in your community. There's a Walgreens pharmacy tech. He makes $30,617 a year. So attainable rent, no more than 30%, would be $765 a month. The secretary at Jeffco, attainable rent, $787. First bank teller, they make $12 an hour, less than $25,000 a year, and their attainable rent, $624. The Whole Foods cook position, $676 for attainable rent. City of Lakewood Public Works maintenance worker, they make $17.14 an hour, and their attainable rent is $891. The Courtyard Marriott assistant manager makes $47,000, and her attainable rent is $1175. Bed Bath & Beyond, $10 an hour, still more than minimum wage. Attainable rent's $520. The Country Club's grounds crew makes almost $30,000, $728. The lube and tire technician, I think this is at Grease Monkey, makes about $25,000. Their attainable rent's $624. A legal assistant can afford $936 a month. We have a wonderful apprentice electrician that's making $16 an hour. Their attainable rent's $832. Our City of Lakewood Police Information Tech, their starting salary is almost $45,000. Their attainable rent's $1124. The RTD bus driver can afford $915 a month. The Comcast field technician can afford $832. A medical assistant makes $35,000. They can afford $884. Here's a little snapshot of the seniors that we're serving. The average age is 72 and a half. Our age range is from 63 to 94. 10% of them are still employed. They have average assets of about $16,684. So if you think that they've sold their house, or everything they have, this is the average of what they have in assets. And the average annual Social Security income is $14,800 a year, so their attainable rent is $370 a month. Here's the rent in Lakewood. The sampling of the 15 positions that I gave you on our seniors. If you go back and look at that, not one of them can afford the one bedroom without spending more than 30% of their income on housing. This makes our job hard, and it can be overwhelming at times because there's so many people that need this kind of housing. There are people that spend way more than 30% of their income on housing, but they also have childcare costs, student loans, food, utilities, medical expenses, a car payment, insurance. You add all that up, there's nothing left over. Even at those pretty decent paying jobs that would have been pretty decent paying, at one point. So there's nothing left over to spend in the community of which they live, and for many of those positions in a community of which they serve. Some of the places you might be familiar with, the West Line at Oak Station, their beginning one bedroom is $1,347. West Line Flats, their beginning rent is $1,250. Trifecta in Belmar is $1,255. And there are rents up to $5,704 for a 4-bedroom in Lakewood. So this is why we have these crazy wait lists. When we opened our Housing Choice Voucher application process last year in September of 2016, we had 3,814 applicants. From that, we only pulled 150 that we're working with in trying to serve, because not all those 150 even have a voucher. And some of those 150 that have a voucher can't find a place to use the voucher. So it's not fair to folks to be on a wait list in which we know they're not ever going to be served. We get 500 weekly calls at our main office and daily walk-in calls at all of our properties for people looking for housing. Each of our properties maintains their own wait list. So that's in addition to the voucher application. And there's over 2,300 on each of those property wait lists. We have a total of 819 units to serve. And as I said, we have very little turnover. In fact, right now we have 0 vacancy. At our senior property wait list, we have over 1,000 seniors, and we have 436 total senior units. And our seniors don't leave until they have to go on to maybe assisted living or they pass away. Our senior properties are always full. And some of our seniors actually like to live in family properties. There are seniors that are on the family property wait list as well, because if they're like my mother who's 85, she doesn't want to live near old people. I mean, our challenge obviously is huge. The demand far outweighs, the resources that we have. And this is what we do every day. And I'm very proud to be able to work towards housing folks who deserve it in a community, that I love and I respect. So this, I hopefully, is just, a snapshot of who we are, what we do. It's just the facts, and this is what we deal with every day. So these are some of our communities. I don't have pictures of everything, but everything has been included somehow in here. But I just wanted to highlight some of the properties and to really show, because we're very proud, this is what affordable housing looks like in your community. And I think we're very fortunate to have some of the best affordable housing in the country. So this is probably a view you haven't had before of Cityscape at Belmar. We like to brag that we're the most colorful housing there, which this picture shows really well. This is a senior property. It has 130 units. It was completed in 2015. At the time of construction, it was $29 million. We've been a winner of 5 state, local, and national awards for this. And we just got word that we were the 2017 recipient of the National Award of Excellence for the best affordable housing program in the nation by the National Association for Housing and Redevelopment, and we'll be getting that award in October. Just a little bit of the interior of Cityscape at Belmar. The Mars Station Crossing. It's a family property, 110 units, completed in 2014. It was a $20.5 million project when under construction. It's a winner of 16 awards. And one of my favorite ones, in 2016, we were the Charles Edson National Tax Credit Excellence Award, which means this is the best tax credit project in the country. So we were very proud to get that. We got that up at the Senate building in Washington, D.C. So this is in your community, and we're very proud of that. It was an interior shot. We actually really love to host our Two Creeks neighborhood meetings in this facility. Residents at Creekside, this is a senior property right behind Casa Bonita, 118 units, completed in 2007. It was $18 million at the time of construction. It won the National Affordable Housing Design and the first ever Green Building Award from NARO. The interior shot. Creekside West was built in 2011, also a senior property that finished out our senior campus. It was $15.5 million development. 30% of the energy needs are provided by solar for the entire campus, which is pretty exciting. And it's won a ton of awards as well. And there's an interior shot. Willow Glen, 70 units completed in 2003, our very first new development in Lakewood of affordable housing. Cost us $9.4 million back then. We learned a lot, but it's still highly sought after, and we love it. This is the inside of Case and Howell House, which is also part of that development that we use as a community center for our seniors. And many of you are familiar with Maplewood Apartments. I don't know if you knew that we own that and manage it. It's a family property, 132 units. We acquired it in foreclosure in 1993. We renovated it in 2009 and put about $16 million into it. And they are known for some absolutely beautiful community gardens. And if you ever drive on Alameda, you know what this is. This is coming in 2018. The building doesn't look like that anymore if you've driven past it. This is going to be a family property, 152 units. We were awarded tax credits in 2016, and this has a budget of $40,274,000. Here's Indy Street Flats. We were awarded tax credits this year to build a family property for 115 units with a budget of almost $30 million. So we do have 2 properties coming online. They don't begin to touch the over 4,000 people that are actually waiting for housing that come through our offices. But we're going to keep plugging along. 100 units here and there, everything makes a difference. And as you can guess, we get calls every day wondering when these properties are going to open up. And if you drive past them, we're not even near that. But we're very proud to be in Lakewood, very proud to provide you beautiful, safe, attainable housing. We hope that you continue your trust in us and continue to let us, serve the people that, live here and serve you as well. Housing means different things to different people. Different incomes, housing is different. There are housing needs of different kind. And we've been working on a video, it's 2 minutes long, for our National Association for Housing and Redevelopment. And we've just went around Lakewood and asked folks, just make a statement about housing. When you hear housing, what does it mean to you? So you're the first ones to see it, and we're proud of it. And these are the folks that live here and work here in Lakewood. Now I got to figure out how to do it. Thank you.
Nicely done. All right. Well, that was a great way to close. I think there'll be some questions, and I just want to let you know I really appreciate what you do, what your mission is, your willingness to work with neighborhoods. I think there's some neighbors in here who maybe we had a project that didn't start off quite right, but it came to be, and it came to be a great project in the community. So that says a lot, as does your motto, more than a roof. And it's tough times.
It's tough times.
And, when you look at the list of folks that you laid out, a lot of those are retail folks, and we have, 3,000 retail jobs that are potentially, sitting idle right now. So it's very meaningful. I appreciate what you do. I look forward to new projects. And I think it's important. One thing that I've really enjoyed as I've learned more about your mission is the crime-free aspect and what that has done. And one of the projects that you had mentioned was a tough place for a long time in Green Mountain until you took it over and changed it quite a bit. So thank you for that, and thank you to your folks who came out. It looks like you have some board members here.
I do. I have
as
two
well.
great board members,
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
John Smith and Sandy Mabin are back there.
Ms. Franks.
I actually don't have a question, but I did want to comment. I just love how you make sure that the properties are so visually appealing and somebody really feels a sense of, that it's a home and it's lovely and it's something nice to look at. I grew, as most people who've watched our council meetings long enough, I grew up well below the poverty line, and I know what it's like to be in surroundings that are maybe a little bleak. And I just love that these folks get to be in such lovely places, and that you guys are also managing multiple properties, and look forward to the 2 that are coming online.
Thank you. We had a barbecue at the Cityscape at Belmar, and one of the gentlemen that was highlighted in there, he said, Tammy, he goes, I just wish everybody had an opportunity to live in a place that was so beautiful. And I said, me too.
Councilor Ryball.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the project at the Martashank Complex. I'm getting real excited. I seen that they took the walls out and they took some of the ceiling out, and they're starting from the bottom up, so to speak, and now they're constructing a brand new foundation for the second building.
Yeah.
I remember when you guys had a grand opening, the projection was, February, March at the time?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Are we looking at maybe June, July?
Yep, we are. We are.
We're getting excited.
Things take a little longer than what we always hoped, but yes, we're
Just a
probably
quick
looking more the
reminder.
end of the summer.
The Martashank Complex, just so everybody knows, had been vacant for many, 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 many years, and it just stood there an eyesore. And thank you for making that whole area, revitalizing that whole area, and I think it's going to bring this whole area for us. It's just going to perk it up, and it's going to keep moving. So, thank you.
You're welcome. We're very excited. It's a very tough project, one that we lose a lot of sleep over.
Councilor Wickman.
A question. I've heard the figure about the 30% before, but I heard you this time saying it includes utilities. What's the definition of utilities?
Gas, electric, the heat and,
Water?
yes, water. Like our properties, we pay for the water. So so if you have a voucher and you're going to a property where you have to pay for your own water, then that would be included in that 30%.
Okay, so includes electric, heat, and water.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Councilor Shakti.
Very nice job laying out the challenge. And I guess I just want to say it's great to have a partner who can make things uplifting. So.
Councilor Gutwein.
Thank you. That video was just amazing, and I'm kind of embarrassed because I started crying watching that, but don't mistake that for weakness.
You weren't the only one who shared it.
That was just amazing. So all I have to say is just wow. to everything you just said. It feels really good to talk about the real issues facing the real people in our community. And I think it was really helpful to look at the people and what the wages are and what you could actually afford in Lakewood. And these are, just like you said, it's everyday people, everyone in our community. And then also about the seniors, I didn't realize just how low, like the $300 a month that's unachievable in Lakewood. And my only question is, can we get a copy of your presentation?
Sure.
Thank you for all you do. We are so lucky in Lakewood to have you.
That's very
Thank you.
kind to say. Thank you.
That would be fantastic if we could have a copy of that. A lot of great information. And is there, if the community wants to learn more, I know we've had some events out at Lamar, and I know you're very welcoming to folks. So if the community wants to find out more, come for a tour, can they do that?
Absolutely. We love to give tours. We have tours from all over the country coming to see our properties, and we love to show them off. We're very proud of them.
Yeah, you should be. All right. Well, thank you very much for coming out. We appreciate the partnership and look forward to many more projects to come.
Thank you for your time. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
Item 6.
Item 6, presentation housing study.
All right. I'm going to call up Ms. Nanette Nealon, our Deputy City Manager, and this will just be kind of a follow-up summary that'll present the findings and then give council some opportunity and the public to digest everything that we have learned.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council and Mayor. I think that's a good synopsis. Tonight, David's here to present the report that you have at the dais right now, and it's online under the housing study, and go over the executive summary with you. Where we'll go from here is we'll wait for some feedback, send your feedback to me directly, and work with David if there's any feedback that you have or clarifications in the report. And then we'll start working on policies and strategies and goals after we get done finalizing this report. And that will go in the final chapter that's not in the report right at this point in time. With that, I ask David to come up and present.
Great. Thank you. David, good evening. You're probably not used to presenting this early at our council meetings. It's not midnight.
How much time do you have?
5
Read
minutes.
the report tonight, and then to have a quiz. I'm kidding. Really. Well, thank you for having me back. It's good to be here, as it always is. And I want to keep this brief. So somebody maybe want to start a clock at 20 minutes. I don't want to max out any more than that. I want to respect your time and all the other agenda items for this evening. But if all of you have a copy of the report in front of you, first of all, we had intended to get this to you about 2 weeks earlier. It's primarily my fault and some coordination. So at the count of 3, you can all give me the evil eye. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Good. Those were pretty good. All right. So if you flip through, let's see, just to give you this overview here, I want to review the findings, which are the executive summary, review the outline of the report, just basically to walk you through the structure, and then the homework and next steps is basically I want you to read it on your own time so that we can have a fuller discussion next time and move forward with any discussion of policies, strategies, and incentives. First of all, so as you know, this study is intended to be more than just a bit of a housing study. It's obviously more than an affordable housing study. It is not specifically an affordable housing study. I don't have any really beautifully put together videos like Metro West did, but we have a long report with a lot of words in it, 23,200 words to be exact, and 107 figures and a lot of tables as well. So with that, let's walk through the various chapters of the findings. You can follow along here on page 2. Begins the summary findings with Chapter 2, the demand side analysis. So the four main findings here: the MSA is growing, but Lakewood is not growing proportionately. Number 3, while a majority of net new job holders and population in the MSA and the city have been millennials, or those under 35 generally, and or those born after 2001, there are significant increases also in the population of those over 55 in the city. Also, a large portion of the city's workforce is commuting in. A larger portion of the workforce is commuting in than it was more than 10 years ago, and many of those imported jobs in the city are in the city's top 6, the city's 6 top performing industries. These findings come from analysis that I presented to you in a combination of the first, second, and third sessions that we've had. So in essence, in these findings is a bit more detail. So it's a summary of detail. It's a highlight of where some of the analysis is in the report with references to figures or tables, what pages they're on, and then a paragraph that is sort of like a so what does this mean section that you can read through and try to understand, at least from our perspective, what these things mean. So for example, the MSA is growing, but Lakewood is not growing proportionally. Well, for one, it is a good thing. If you visualize a lot of demand pressure coming in, that's a good thing that everybody wants. There is, however, a bit of an obstacle or filter to Lakewood being on the receiving end of all of that employment and population growth. As we've talked about, there have been a disproportionate growth in jobs versus population. So for every one household or every one housing unit increase in the city, there have been 3 job increases. So a ratio of 3 to 1 in jobs to housing. On a metro-wide basis, that's more like 0.9. So there's been 0.9 jobs per housing unit growth in the metro area. So Lakewood is a bit of an outlier in terms of growing its jobs, which is the good thing, but not proportionally growing the housing. So the question is, obviously, is the supply adequate to meet those demands? Do you want that demand? Do you want that growth? Those are underlying questions that you can all sort of grapple with on your own. But the analysis shows that there is a component of demand through the workforce, and knowing that a majority of the workforce has been under 35, especially in those top performing industries within Lakewood. A little bit more of the stated preference work that is in 2 slides and that we've gone over predominantly in the last session indicates that a lot of those workers are actually looking for housing with certain specifics, certain preferences. But that's not to overlook the fact that existing residents that are of retirement age, who have retired between 2000 and 2015, have stayed in place. They want to age in place. That creates a housing supply constraint that you can do something about if you choose to do something about it. So moving on to the supply side analysis of this are a variety of findings. Some are very dry, some are more meaningful than others. So beginning on page 5 of the executive summary are the supply side analysis findings. The first 2 of which, the city added relatively little housing between 2000 and 2015. By different sources of estimates, either by the census, the city added about 5,200 jobs. By building permits, the city added about 61 or 6,200 units. So the city has, and again, the city's added only 1 housing unit for every 3 jobs it created between that time. Again, this puts pressure on price, and I think it was in the first or the second session we looked at some Economics 101 house price dynamics, where when you look at supply and demand and the effects on price and quantity. Obviously, if you have an environment where demand is enhanced, you have higher pressures put on price, which drives the price up. And if there's supply constraints, that constrains the supply curve, which further pushes the price up. So you're dealing with a situation where where it's very likely that because the city has limited areas, and this is number 9, the city has limited areas to facilitate additional growth as you have been historically accustomed, that is greenfield growth, there are few areas for new development. So that obviously means that comes with some challenges. I do want to point back number 7. The city has facilitated growth during this time in areas that do align with its public policy objectives. This is not code language, but this is that you have facilitated growth where your comprehensive plan has identified it. Now, the comprehensive plan was adopted just in 2015, so you can't exactly impose that kind of a structure on the growth from 2000 to 2015. However, it is rather reassuring from our standpoint, and it should be from yours, that the growth that has occurred has really aligned very largely with your identified growth areas and for the preservation of the traditional suburban neighborhoods throughout the rest of the city. So there are data and maps to illustrate that, which I think we looked at first back on the first session in February and also the second session in March. And then the last one here is a rather dry and ambiguous statement about the city's housing inventory being not entirely homogeneous. So we might come to a study looking at a first-ring community in an MSA, assuming that a community that has historically been a very desirable bedroom community would have a rather homogeneous mix of housing. That really isn't the case. The city does have about 55 or 50% single-family detached housing units in its inventory as of 2015, but the city does have 35% in attached single-family, or single-family that ranges from, well, that is attached, and multifamily housing that's defined as housing in structures with 2 to 49 units. So that's not exactly high density, it's rather medium density. The city has 35% of its housing inventory in that classification, which is 10% more than the proportion of the MSA, which is rather interesting. But it does have obviously less inventory in terms of buildings with more than 50 units in it. So obviously downtown Denver and Denver itself has a considerably higher proportion of these types of housing in its inventory. It should also be noted that along with this housing inventory assessment is the notion that there are two sides of this. One side is that the general density is about 2 to 4 units per acre, gross units per acre. That includes streets, rights of way, open spaces. In most of its census tracts, with the exception of areas that do align with your comprehensive plan growth areas. In those areas, there are variations up to 12 to 20 units per acre, and so on. The map is included in this report. Should be pointed out, though, that the gross density of 2 to 4 units per acre is less than Stapleton's gross density per acre, which is generally 5 to 6. Just as a visual point of comparison for how Lakewood itself generally compares to a development I think a lot of people in the metro area are familiar with in terms of housing product, its visual appeal, etc. And then the stated preference analysis. This was based on the survey responses from the city's workforce and from residents as well. All the results and statistics of that survey are included in this report. I think I did forget to include the hard copy of the report of the survey instrument in this, so I apologize for that. So I've already made a note of that. I'm sure it'll occur to you as well as you're going through wanting to know what the exact questions were, but that will be included in the final. So the stated preferences. These are very interesting, and we tried to summarize these in ways that might be accessible. And much like Tammy's presentation, made it very accessible to talk about income levels and attainability by equating different occupations with income levels and what their affordability levels were. I've summarized these by age groups because I think in the demographic analysis and in the employment analysis, we've been talking about age groups, so I wanted there to be some consistency. We have, though, when it's been possible, and in the appendix, I think it's Appendix B for miscellaneous information, there is a juxtaposition of individual wage levels and where they fall in the affordability spectrum, and then what kind of a price point is attainable for those. That's all. That's in the very back of this report. So, findings of the stated preference survey. Number one, physical features of the home. The finding here is no different than most of the surveys we've ever conducted in communities. People are very cost and quality conscious in Lakewood, and that is predominantly the case here. When it comes to neighborhood and community features, people are predominantly safety and security conscious and privacy conscious. That is also no surprise. We talked about that in the second presentation. So summarizing these by age groups, the under 35 group is largely, in 2015, these would have been all millennials. So for the under 35s, they are the most cost conscious of any of the age groups. They are also mindful of safety and security, but not so much as the others. They are far more driven to live near parks, shops, open space, and transit, and want walkability to those areas. Now, when you look at what they want in the future, the question always is, well, that may be what they want right now, but is that what they want when their household type changes? Many of them are single right now. Many of them are living in rental units. Many of them are living in small rental units. So you might anticipate that a couple things are going to be really important to them when they're looking to their next move, when they get their first really good job, when they start a family, they get married, they have children, they really need a dog, and so on. So they're going to be much more mindful of the size of a home. They're going to be more mindful of privacy between homes. But the question is whether or not they're going to be as concerned about proximity to parks, shops, transit, those sorts of things. So all of those kind of points of comparison for their current and their future considerations are in the report and detailed to the extent that I thought were very interesting. It is interesting to point out that in terms of their future preferences, the under 35s are going to be very interested in the quality of public schools in their next move, and walkability to those schools, privacy, safety, and home size. So for the 35 to 54s, then, they are concerned about, obviously, a lot of things family and work-oriented. They want a short commute to work. That is one of their most important attributes or considerations in where to live. So they're concerned a little bit more than everybody else about historic character, schools, right now, and everything that has to do with safety. But in the future, they seem to be interested in slightly lower maintenance, also walkability to transit, again, schools and parks. So those have also implications for housing supply and demand. For the over 55s, it's interesting to look at how people's scoring of what is very important changes. I don't know whether people generally become, I shouldn't say I don't know. I've observed that people generally become more conservative as they age. I have become more conservative, even though I was rather conservative to begin with. But as you look at the age breakdowns of these types of stated preferences, you see that people's opinions about what's really important and what they're really enthusiastic about actually diminishes. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they find them less important. It is simply a statement about where their priorities are, because they still do, in those age categories, indicate what is really very important, and proportionally so to everything else that is being indicated. So for those over 55, physical and neighborhood features are much more important to this group's considerations than others. So obviously lower maintenance structures and living is very important and becomes increasingly important to this age group. So as we think about the types of living environments that a population that is aging in place needs, Not all of those will consider that their current home is sufficient for aging in place. Many of them will. I think I would, but many of them will. And those proportions and numbers are in the report. So the final one on supply is that if those who work, going back to those who work here, those who work but don't necessarily live in the city wanted to live in the city in areas with amenities that they have stated as very important, preliminary analysis would show that the city is undersupplied, and a preliminary calculation shows that in terms of just transit proximity might be as many as 15,000 units short of walkability to transit. It's a preliminary calculation, but just as a benchmark. Realizing, too, that transit, we're talking about regional bus stops and we're talking about rail stations as well, and that the rail stations obviously are not that old and not a significant amount of development has really gone in around those rail stations as of yet. Anyway, so the last one is summary findings on conclusions. This is a bit of a wrap-up in terms of what role the housing plays in economic development to make sure that we are tying the knot back to economic development. Economic development isn't just about recruiting jobs. It's really about developing the economy in general. So developing activity centers, developing employment centers, basically putting things in place that build a sense of place, that build a sense, that build a base of assurance for the city's fiscal, economic, and community or social welfare in the long term. So how adequate is the city's mix of housing for a changing demand? Well, there are two sides. On one hand, the city's supply of housing is sufficient. On the other hand, a portion is insufficient. That doesn't necessarily mean that the housing itself is insufficient. It means that on one hand, there may be an insufficient supply of housing in the right areas, and those areas might also need reinvestment in terms of its commercial infrastructure, as in the analysis we looked at in the second presentation, looked at those amenities, we looked at retail centers, the CoStar designations, for example, of retail centers identified some odd little collection of things on West Colfax here and there, and some other areas that are obviously not of the same classification of Belmar, for example. And they are not a regional mall with the same distribution of types and varieties and quality of regional retail establishments. So there is that bit of an assessment that still needs to take place in terms of those activity centers, not just employment centers, but those commercial activity centers, which do align with the city's designated growth areas. So and that really encapsulates the what does this mean for the supply situated in desirable neighborhoods, and then what does it mean to have a vibrant community with respect to housing? The last finding in the executive summary is basically that this is really our subjective opinion looking through the lens of this analysis, identifying that from our perspectives, a vibrant community means. With respect to housing means having a sufficient supply of housing that meets demands for a spectrum of life stages and a spectrum of incomes that are aligned with the city's workforce. It is not always possible to have housing that facilitates the demands and meets the demands of every single one of the people who work in the city of Lakewood. It's also it's also a bit of manipulative engineering, if you will, to say that we want everybody who works in the city of Lakewood to live here, because not everybody would want to live here. Some people want to live elsewhere. So we can't make people do what they don't want to do. On the other end of the spectrum, we don't want a community to reach the point of, say, an Aspen, where there is absolutely no supply of housing for the community's workforce, and the supply that the city has built to meet the demands of its workforce is now being locked up and is now constraining the supply even more, because now that those workers are in those units, they don't want to leave even after they've retired. So communities like Aspen are now confronting a double whammy of a problem. So just to illustrate where things go on the wild end of the spectrum, you don't want to reach the point where, because it is a desirable community, which I do want to say about Lakewood, that you reach the point where everybody wants to simply age in place, and there is very little housing left over for the would-be residents who also need to work in Lakewood to generate the property sales tax and income bases for the city's fiscal and financial health. So the report outline, which we've basically gone through, is the demand side analysis, highlighting employment, jobs, industry mix, demographic composition, employer demands, commuting patterns, and the population. After all, demand side is predominantly employment driven. Demand for the Denver MSA, however, is clearly very population driven. As the executive summary points out and this analysis points out, even during the recession in 2009 and 10, when the MSA lost about 76,000 jobs, the MSA still grew by 39,000 people. That's not the case for every MSA around the country. On the supply side, there are 10 or so categories of housing inventory analysis, from density to types to tenure, the vacancy, a jobs to housing ratio, age of structure, construction activity, sales, housing turnover, and the rental market. And in the stated preferences, there are the characteristics of choice, the first level of breakdown, so stage of life needs, physical features of preferences, neighborhood features, and community features, how each of those plays a role in one's consideration for where to live, and then how those distinctions by age group differ, their current considerations and their future considerations. Again, future being near term, as in the next 5 years. People find it very difficult to answer questions about anything beyond 5 years from now. And then the supply-demand synthesis. Chapter 5 is a placeholder. We still want to have that discussion, so that is to be put in place next. And then 2 appendixes. One is details of the stated preference by age group, and then Appendix B are some other the pieces of information that we've talked about in the last meeting and in the first meeting. One is housing price attainability, where we looked at the spectrums and defined the categories and the types and so on, and then a look at the consumer expenditure. There might be some other pieces of information that came up that we've overlooked that should be in here. So please give us your comments on all of that. And if you do read through the report, which I highly encourage you to do, then we'll have a meaningful discussion next time, and we'll incorporate those comments and feedback in the final version.
Great. Thank you very much. As always, it's a lot of information. We have a lot to go through. I'm excited that we have some of our planning commissioners here as well. I think this would be great information as they begin their new journey. Councilor Wickman, question?
I was trying to write the numbers down as you were going pretty fast. What was the number of units you said were added between, it was like 2000 and 2015, was that the time period?
Yeah, the number of, according to the census, there were about 5,200 households or occupied housing units added in the city. And that would not include the number of vacant units. So the difference in the data for the construction activity, which is about 6,100 units permitted in the city between 2015, would account for the vacancy rate staying roughly the same as it was back in 2000.
Okay. Now those 5,200, how many were at Green Gables?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
And how many were at those 2 projects on Union?
I don't think anywhere at Green Gables. I'm getting a no, since that's not in the city of Lakewood.
All right. Well, let's give me. we're talking about the housing situation in Lakewood, and we're not even considering Green Gables. I mean, I understand it's not technically within the boundaries, but that's kind of our community. It's going to affect our housing situation. That was not included in the analysis at all?
If the city doesn't include Green Gables permit activity in that, we didn't get that data to begin with.
So we're saying we're kind of short of housing, but all this housing is going on right at Green. All right, never mind. Thank you.
Sure.
Councilor Abel?
There's a lot of information in here, and it's broken down pretty well in the back. There are some things that I think need a better focus. You say that folks are concerned about cost and quality. Does that mean that they want to pay less for more, or are they kind of quantify that for me? Are they looking at a balance? Are they looking at, in other words, are they expecting granite countertops, for a reduced price?
Well, we didn't survey people on their expectations of what they would get for a certain price point. I think the best information would probably only be anecdotal in terms of what that means. I would only be surmising what people's expectations are. I can tell you though that of all of these physical features, neighborhood features, and community features, people are making trade-offs, and people are making trade-offs obviously all the time. We can say that, however, that there are a lot of people making trade-offs between what they're willing to pay in order to be in certain types of locations. So obviously, if somebody values walkability to work more than anything else, they probably are going to sacrifice granite countertops, for example, or other physical features for the ability to walk to work. However, they might be able to find a compromise somewhere in between. There are trade-offs that occur between all of these different attributes, and it's impossible to kind of look at the data and have it answer every single question that you want, but you can sort of rest assured that people are making trade-offs among a variety of their core concerns and between them.
I think that would hold for just about anything folks want to spend their money for. They would look at quality versus cost. So I'm trying to get an idea of just how that fits into this equation. And again, kind of undefined. Folks want a short commute. What does that mean? And some people that grew up in Dallas, for instance, and commuted 25 miles each way might think that a 10-mile commute is short, but some folks think that 5 blocks away is a short commute. So do you quantify that at all?
What people's perceptions of a short commute are? It is, again, when we ask people what a short commute is to work, it is with regard or relative to whatever their commute is. We ask people whether they are willing to pay a certain amount, say 10% more in housing, to cut their commute time in half, and that does generate quite a bit of a response.
And that gives a more firm idea of what they're talking about as well.
I can tell you, though, at a national level, the average commute time is about 20 minutes for all workers. 180 million jobs or so.
In Lakewood, that depends on where on Wadsworth you are.
Depends where on Wadsworth you are exactly. Whether you hit the lights.
Another thing I found interesting was that there was some sort of ambivalence there. Not interested in this today, but I might be interested in that tomorrow.
I wouldn't call it you mean for example the under 35s?
No, 35, even those above 55, they might be interested in the future. Well, you better hurry up and get interested if you're over 55 like I am.
Let's put it in terms of the responses that we asked, that we tried to shall I say, rudely box people into were how important are these considerations to you now, and how important are these considerations going to be to you in the next 5 years? Are they going to be very important, somewhat important, not so important, or not at all important? And those were the responses that people gave. So for example, of those 13 considerations, either 12 or 13 considerations in total, people indicated generally whether it was very important to have lower maintenance living, very important or not at all important to live in walkable proximity to transit, for example.
And a lot of that will be made clear when I get to the stated preferences by age group in the Appendix A.
Well, I hope so.
Those are laid out there.
Yeah. And if it isn't, you'll have to let me know that it needs to be clear.
Thank you. One other thing is, we say that our housing stock is not homogeneous. Does that mean it's diverse, or is it
I realized that was a bit of a
not alike in other
big
ways?
statement to make. But it's basically to say, it's not, Lakewood is not all single-family housing. That's what it means. Lakewood is not all single-family housing. It is not all one housing type. There is a diversity of housing. One might have thought, well, coming into a housing study for what used to be a bedroom community that's now confronting sort of urbanization pressures, you would have 90% single-family housing. That is not the case. That's simply what that means.
So we do have a diversity of housing stock.
We do have a diversity of housing stock. I would say, the analysis goes a little bit further to quantify what that means in terms of density and housing types. We've got comparisons to the MSA and each of the other counties where data were available. And you can see where the building permit activity occurred, its location, and its type. As in single-family attached, townhomes, duplexes, multifamily with 5 or more units in it.
Thank you. Browsing through this before the meeting, I was impressed with the way the appendix is presented and how it does break those things down. I appreciate it.
Great. Well, I appreciate it, and we look forward to next time.
Okay, me too.
All right. Thank you. Do you have a question?
I was expecting more people to have questions.
Well, tonight was just the opportunity to present this and be able to digest it so we can have a better conversation. Thank you. All right. Before I go to public comment, we have a couple special guests. Dr. Glass is here. He's doing a little bit of a road show and wanted to come by and introduce himself and say hello. So welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm Jason Glass. I'm the new superintendent for Jeffco Public Schools, and I just wanted to come by and say hello. You'll be relieved to hear that I'm here to neither complain nor ask for anything. Instead, just to say thank you.
That'll change.
That will change. Right. Tonight, I am not here yet. I am just here to say thank you. Thank you. In the 7 weeks that I've been able to serve as superintendent in Jeffco, I've traveled across the community and talked to so many people. And I think this city and the work that you do is a great example of the partnership between a school district and a municipal government. We do wonderful things together on behalf of people that live here and the kids in Lakewood, and I want to commend you for offering and creating intentionally a really positive place for families to grow up and a great quality of life. My wife and I and our daughter Nora, who's 5, and our son Chase is 4, we live in Lakewood, and so we're proud to be part of this community and take advantage of all of the things that you do. In those 7 weeks and all the conversations that I've had, I sense a real desire in the community to sort of move us past the ideological divides that Jeffco Public Schools has been known for the past several years. I think the community is ready for that, and that's certainly going to be my focus, to get our entire community, Lakewood and beyond, thinking about what are the outcomes that we want for our children, and how do we configure our schools in a way that deliver on those. And that's a nonpartisan issue. That's something that, regardless of what your political stripes are, is something that can unite us together, and I hope we can continue those conversations. all of you again have been so supportive of our schools and our children and families, and I just want to again commend you for that. And thank you for the time tonight.
No, that's great. Thank you, and welcome to your family. You've been going nonstop. I see you all over the place, so you're really trying to get in and get involved. We appreciate that. We may be separate governments, but they're all our kids, and we want to make sure that we can do the best for them. So we look forward to a great partnership in the years to come.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, sir. Get home to your family. Can we move that? Thank you. And then I'm going to ask the chairman of our planning commission to come down. He wanted to mention a couple things as they are getting ready to embark on a new process. Chairman Hollander, how are you, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just, we had a joint planning session, as you remember, a joint study session discussing some of the zoning ordinance problems that we've all experienced in our hearings in City Council and Planning Commission. And we are formulating a program. I don't have a lot of details yet. We do have our retreat on Friday. We're going to be discussing more details. But we are looking at trying to come up with recommendations by the end of the year for zoning ordinance revisions. So I just wanted to report that this is moving forward.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your hard work and your willingness to move this forward. I think Ms. Hodson at the end might have some more in-depth information as well on the process. All right, so now I will open public comment. This is the point in the meeting where the public is invited to address the City Council on items that did not appear on the agenda. All comments should be directed to the City Council. I'll ask all in attendance to observe the decorum of the City Council chambers and refrain from applause or audible support or discord with the speaker. This little box right here will go green for 2.5 minutes, then it'll go yellow, and when your time is up, it will turn red. I will politely try to wrap you up. If you did wish to speak on any of the ordinances later on, we'll have separate public comment opportunities for that. So first up, we have Mr. Chisholm. Good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
City Council, Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, greetings. My name is Jay Chisholm. I am the property owner at 1595 Carr Street, Lakewood, Colorado. I want to let you know my quarrel is not with the building department. They do not have any problem with my wall that I want to build. My quarrel is with the Public Works Department. We recently received this letter from the Public Works Department. It says here that if the wall is not torn down, the city will start enforcement action regarding encroachment into the floodway. My engineering firm is the structural engineer for a small office building in the town of Morrison. The new building is in the Bear Creek 100-year floodway, according to this report by Muller Engineering. The letter, it's Muller Engineering. The letter is addressed to the City of Morrison floodplain engineer. The City of Morrison is allowing this building to be built entirely in the floodway as shown on this FEMA map. The building is there. As you know, Bear Creek is an active stream that runs year-round. This is the map of the Dry Creek that shows the location of my property. And it is not in the floodway. I talked to one of my former tenants who has been on the property for 37 years. He said he has never seen North Dry Gulch run. Your refusal to allow my little wall does not make sense. The reason for it, I think, is hatred and vindictiveness on the part of your Public Works Department against my small business. There's no place for this in a city. The town of Morrison, on the other hand, welcomes small business, even letting them build in the floodway. You have a sign at the entrance to your city that says, "We are building an inclusive community." This is a lie. You are haters. My wife and I are elderly. Why do you hate the elderly? We are victims of crime. Why do you hate victims of crime? We are on a fixed income. Why do you hate those on a fixed income? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And before you go, I really would like to encourage you to continue to work with staff. I know they've really tried to put some things together, so if you can continue to try to work, that'd be fantastic. Mr. Mace, come on down. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. Mayor, the reason I am here tonight is mainly to address you and the whole City Council. About 2 years ago, I asked when the mayor took office to not use the word disabled. Last week, somebody in this council used that word. I have spoken to that council member. I am not upset, but Mayor, when that word gets used, I am asking the city council to throw that word completely out, because it is for people that use wheelchairs, walkers, whatever equipment to get around, that word can be very, very offensive. We're not disabled. We just have challenges that none of you guys will ever be able to imagine. And you know what? People like myself, we get around them all the time. You know, stairs, for example. You guys are very lucky that you can go up and down stairs. But people that have wheelchairs and walkers, we can't. But you know what? We have brains, and we know how to get around those issues. Mayor, at the end of public comment, I would really appreciate I would really appreciate an apology from you on behalf of council because of last week's comment. I don't know if you were aware of it, but I was not very pleased about it. I am asking council to throw the word disabled completely out and not allow staff or city council to use that word. Thank you.
Certainly, Mr. Mace, and I can tell you, I'm not sure where that came from, but nobody up here would be saying something like that to offend anybody. But if you want to take this opportunity to share with the council and the rest of the folks here as what terminology would be better suited, that'd be fantastic.
Okay, I can do that.
Good.
Council members, what I would really appreciate you guys using, instead of using disabled, please use the word challenged or ask the person who you are communicating with what word or they would like for you to use when you are addressing them. But please do not use the word disabled anymore. This is the second time I've come down for this. And Mayor, like I said, please ask council to throw the word disabled out because it is very, very offensive. Please use the word either physically challenged or mentally challenged, just like I have asked the mayor to do when he took office. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mary?
No problem.
Good evening.
Hi, thank you for allowing public comment. During the last city council meeting, it was announced that the final payment on the Kelly property will be made next month, and the property is proposed to be incorporated into the Hayden open space. Now that's something to celebrate. Hearing that made me appreciate the city, the foresight that the city had 30 years ago when it made the decision to acquire that property. That was quite a legacy to leave to the residents of Lakewood. But that was 30 years ago. I hope that the current council uses similar foresight to benefit Lakewood citizens. The foresight to look beyond the current boom cycle and remember what the inevitable downturn looks like. The foresight to understand what will be desired and vital to Lakewood's residents in the future, like a range of housing, including single-family homes, good schools, sound infrastructure, adequate water resources, clean air, open space, and parks. Another example of a good legacy to leave Lakewood residents is to move that beautiful historical trolley to the Heritage Center where it can be seen and appreciated. Since it is the year of the child, think about what kind of Lakewood you will leave them. What will your legacy be? Thank you.
Thank you very much. David Skilling? Good evening.
Good evening, Council. David Skilling. Full disclosure, I am the Ward 4 candidate for City Council. I wanted to talk a little bit about the attainable and affordable housing that we heard about in the presentation. And I know that I've spoken a lot about this to you guys about what I'm seeing in our ward, in particular Green Mountain, which is vastly different from what some of your constituents are seeing in your wards. That Green Mountain is a very different place. Not any better, certainly, but a very different place than Ward 1, than Ward 2, than all of the other wards. The parking study that we had, I don't know what that was, 2-3 weeks ago, whenever the parking presentation we had, one of the interesting statistics that I heard from that was that in May of 2017, the 35 Van Gordon property, that big apartment complex that we have built there in Green Mountain, was only 65% occupied. And I think that that property demonstrates that in Ward 4, at least, we're not building affordable housing. We're not building attainable housing. The types of housing that we're building are the monstrosity that we have there on Union that's being built. Not really my words, that's just kind of what I hear from people when they want to describe it. That's what they're calling it. We have the 35 Van Gordon building. We also have the proposed building behind the Safeway at Ohio and Mississippi, which is 260 luxury apartments. $1,800 for one bedrooms and going up. Not attainable, not affordable. From there we've heard, and maybe, I know the growth initiative discussion was tabled, but a lot of the problems that we see in Ward 4 especially, we don't really need growth initiatives to tackle those problems. Things like having a mandatory, if somebody wants to build 40 or more units or 30 or more units or 50 or more units, whatever you guys decide, but if somebody wants to build a big complex, maybe they have to come to council. Maybe that has to go through an approval process. And what that would do is give people an opportunity to speak out to you and say, hey, in my neighborhood, we don't need this particular housing. Just like in Ward the other wards, they might say, hey, council, we really need some apartments to be built here, and we need it fast. I think that the problem that people see is that we're not enforcing our zoning ordinance correctly. We just heard from planning that they're looking to rectify some things. But there's other things we could look at. Revising the cash in lieu system instead of having developers just pay a pittance. Make them actually donate serious land. Those are the types of things that we're having issues with in Ward 4. That all of the building projects that we see, whether it's this Indigo project, whether it's Solterra, whether it's Rooney Valley, whether it's our neighborhoods where they want to just keep building expensive luxury apartments, that is not attainable and not affordable housing. So I wish we could come up with some solutions, and maybe it is what we've talked a little bit about, but something that addresses the needs that Councilman Gutwein has in her ward, that Ramey Johnson has in her ward, that the mayor, his concerns throughout Lakewood, but that don't work in Green Mountain. And so with that, I just wanted to bring that up when we were talking about housing and attainable and affordable housing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Always.
Thanks for coming out. Linda?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Welcome.
I'm sure that you have all witnessed the phenomenon of two people or groups coming to the same conclusion on an issue for entirely different reasons. That being said, tonight I find myself in the unusual place of actually agreeing with Mayor Paul's conclusion in his op-ed.
Oh.
Yes. On the petition to cap growth in Lakewood at 1%. That is, it would not be good for the citizens of Lakewood. I'm as concerned as anyone with the density issues in Lakewood, but I am convinced there must be a better way to accomplish what we want to see done than by following through with an extremely convoluted formula as outlined in the petition. There's a saying, the devil's in the details. 14 pages of complex legalese. I suspect that many who signed the petition had their hearts in the right place, but they were hoodwinked because they had no clue that they were signing 14 pages of stuff that goes against the principles of limited government, free markets, and protection of property rights. I urge you and the citizens of Lakewood to look closely for unintended consequences. For instance, developers will go elsewhere to develop market-based projects because of the stringent rules. New development would necessarily be low income, high density for developers to get a decent return on their investment. And they would have to be subsidized by government grants. So this is exactly the opposite of what petitioners would hope would happen. Mayor Paul was right. This is not good for Lakewood. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will mark this night on my calendar, Ms. McAtee. Ronald, come on down. And is it McClady? Is that? Okay, Clate. Oh, I see that. Okay. Must be a middle initial. Yes, please. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Ron Clate. My address is 9360 West Tennessee Avenue, and I'm here to comment on the residential growth limitations for Lakewood. I would like to stress that we're all here, I think, in Lakewood for the quality of life, and I think that some of the growth that's been happening is going to diminish that. Traffic certainly is a concern. Crime is a concern. I do fall into that class of the over 55, so that's also my point of view. But many of us who live here came to be in a suburban area. And I think that we want to certainly not be in an urban area, but certainly close to Denver. I think we all have to look at streets like Alameda, that, in my opinion, is becoming the new Colfax. Wadsworth Boulevard is going to be our answer to Colorado Boulevard. It's just more growth, I know, means profit, but I'd like the council to consider that we need to concentrate on the other word that begins with the letter P, and that's the people. What does no limitations mean? Or excuse me, what does some of these things mean? If we want to see what happens without some limitations, we have to look east at Denver. Denver is putting up apartments on every corner without any parking, I might add. Traffic is certainly out of control, and I think that we have a chance to control or to limit this. Look at the corner of Wadsworth and Alameda with the project that went up. Look at, I know that Green Gables doesn't fall directly in the area, but if you look at Jewel and Wadsworth, is this what we want for a future? It's my opinion that I would have to say no. I think that I'd like to stress that we want to keep quality of life here for the people that live here. And I think that the fairest thing would be is to put this to a vote and let people vote on this matter and let the majority decide. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Betcha. Thanks for coming out. All right, that exhausts the public comment roster for any non-agenda item. Anybody wish to speak? Seeing none, I will close public comment. And next up, I have the consent agenda, which tonight just is item 8, and I'll ask the clerk to read that into the record.
Item 8, approving the minutes of the regular city council meeting of June 26th and the minutes of the special city council meeting of July 10th, both 2017.
Okay, so did anybody want to make comment on the approval of minutes of city council meetings? All right, seeing none, I'll close public comment. And I'll ask for a motion and a vote, please.
Mayor Paul, I move for the approval of the council minutes, all which are included in the consent agenda items introduced into the record by the city clerk.
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please cast your votes. And that passes 10 ayes, 0 nays. Will the clerk please read item 9 in the record?
Item 9, Ordinance O 2017-10, authorizing execution of a permanent easement to the Sheridan Station West Metropolitan District for drainage and related facilities across municipal property at West 11th Avenue and Depew Street, Lakewood, Colorado.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Wilson? Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Paul and members of the City Council. My name is Stephen Wilson, and I'm a staff planner with the city. I'd like to introduce Adrian with Lakewood Property Management. He's also here this evening, and we can answer questions as needed. And I'd like to introduce the next request. So the applicant, Doug Alenowitz, is here to make a request for an easement on city-owned property that will be used for a detention facility for the West Line Village project. Staff supports the request because there will be voluntary improvements, including curb, gutter, and detached sidewalk on West 11th Avenue that can't be required with the project, but will be a benefit to the community. Additionally, the land is encumbered by an Excel easement that prevents other types of uses with buildings on the property. Site plan and plat have been submitted and they're currently under review. And staff believes that this will be a great partnership and a great project for the city of Lakewood. So with that, I'd like to invite Doug Alenowitz to give his presentation, if I may.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mr. Alenowitz. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and ladies and gentlemen of council. Thank you for having me here this evening. My name is Doug Alenowitz. I've been before you on several other occasions, and we are nearing, hopefully, the finish line on the very exciting Westline Village project, a for-sale housing project adjacent to the Sheridan Light Rail Station. Tonight I'm actually here as the president of the Sheridan Station West Metropolitan District, and the subject matter for the evening is as Stephen mentioned, the proposed easement for the Metropolitan District for drainage facilities. Okay. So the area that we are talking about is just to the north of the existing proposed project area. And it is currently a high-tension power line easement that's utilized by Xcel. And just to the west, actually, off the side of that screen, is a substation that you can't see, but it's a big substation. You guys have seen this before. But just to give you some perspective about the property that we're talking about, that's in those green checked boxes there. So this evening, the request is for council to approve the construction and perpetual maintenance by the Metropolitan District of a detention basin in that Xcel power line easement. The easement was acquired by the city of Lakewood in 2014, but it still has that perpetual easement for Xcel there. The reason for it is really, there's multiple reasons, but the one that we saw was the opportunity to leverage the private investment that we're going to naturally be making in this area to a larger benefit for the community as a whole. And so we were going to be spending dollars for detention no matter what. We saw the opportunity to be able to have an engineering solution in this space that results in the ability to improve and enhance that area overall for all of the residents, not just the residents inside the Westline Village project. And it's an area that has been generally underserved in recent years from additional new infrastructure development. So it's really an opportunity to partner with the city. We are bringing forward voluntary public improvements beyond just this detention facility. We're going to be constructing a Dry Gulch Regional Trail extension. We're going to be constructing trailside amenities along there, the installation and maintenance of trees and landscape, construction of curb, gutter, and sidewalk along West 11th Avenue leading over towards that station. And it also creates an opportunity for additional partnerships with the, in this case, we've proposed a partnership with the 40 West Arts District to be able to support public art within this area. And, you know, last year I was before council and we were talking about Metropolitan District and its use in a tool to really drive infrastructure outcomes and a broader public benefit. And this is one of those examples where we're able to leverage and harness the power of that district that this council approved to create a safe and more inviting area around this Sheridan Light Rail Station and the Dry Gulch Trail itself. The district will pay for and maintain all of the infrastructure that we're talking about here. So just a couple of pictures to give you a sense of the area that we're talking about right now. This is kind of this is the existing condition. I took these pictures the other day. It's, you know, it's there. It's got big towers on it, and it's got, you know, some broken fences and things around it. It's not, you know, terribly exciting. And then this is just a bit of the engineering. This is some of the site plan that we've been working with the engineering department and the planning department and members of staff, and are grateful for their collaboration in this to try to identify ways that we can not only solve that engineering solution for the water quality needs of the area, but also to be thinking about ways that we can just improve the public realm. And then these are just a couple of images, renderings that were done based off of some of those engineering designs that give you a sense of what it could be. And, you know, the one component of the wall there gives us that opportunity for those who attended the Mural Fest. I've been talking with Bill about, you know, trying to put out a program to get, you know, some 40 West Arts inclusion out there. But you can see it's just, you know, if you go from that to that, you know, I don't know, it feels pretty good. And then here's a daytime picture. That's actually looking to the south along what we'll be building a Depew Street extension from West 10th Avenue to West 11th Avenue. And again, just giving a sense of, taking an area and really trying to think about ways that we can expand the benefit and the impact of trying to invest in these communities. So with that, if there are any questions, thank you very much.
Mr. Leonard, if you don't mind, I'm going to hold questions. I'm going to go ahead and open public comment on the hearing, and then we'll come back to questions. Councilor Johnson, I see that you lit up, so we'll make sure you're first. Okay, so I do have public comment. Looks like everybody who signed up was here, remembers 3 minutes, 2.5. Mr. Marino, I see you waving. We'll make sure anybody else who didn't sign up has the chance to speak. 2.5 minutes yellow, 3 minutes red. First up, Ms. Kathy Hasfjord. Oh, you did say you don't wish to speak. Next up, Ms. Maddie Nichols wishes to speak. Good evening.
Good evening. Hello to council and the mayor. My name is Maddie Nichols. I reside at 5800 West 8th Avenue. And I'm here to say that I think this is one of the amenities that would really make a great big difference to the Two Creeks neighborhood in this particular area, which is real close to the Sheridan Station. And the land that's there now is basically open space with really nothing. Nobody uses it for anything. It's not a trail, it's not anything at the present time. So we have endorsed and really think this will be a great amenity to our community and would like to see this happen. We're happy to have market rate housing and to have an amenity that would be a asset to the whole neighborhood, not just to the project that's being developed. So we would like you all to very much consider this as something that the city of Lakewood would think as a positive asset to our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Davis. Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome.
I'm going to have to raise this a little bit here. So Charles Davis, and to quote Mr. Skilling, full disclosure, I am also a candidate for City Council Ward 2, and I'm purchasing one of the units at the Westline Village. And I ride my bike up and down the street behind it on 11th on almost a daily basis, commuting to downtown Denver, and that place needs improvement. I think this type of public partnership, private partnership to improve an otherwise unimprovable land is a fabulous idea to be able to get good drainage in the area and to make a park in Ward 2, which they don't have very many parks in Ward 2, and it's basically a way for the city to leverage a developer who's offering to spend good monies to make something better for the residents of Lakewood. So I ask you consider voting for this. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And Ms. Dolgan, you wish not to speak, but you support the question? Okay. Mr. Heald, you didn't want to speak, but you support the question. Thank you, sir. Mr. Boyd, you favor the question, do not wish to speak. Bill Marino, I imagine you favor the question, you wish to speak. That's all right. Anybody else is allowed now. We got through the roster. It's open season. Council President said 2 minutes, though.
2 minutes, 1 minute, less than two. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, City Council, Mr. Mayor. I'm Bill Marino. I'm here to speak on behalf of 40 West Arts and the Lakewood West Colfax Business Improvement District. I think we all know we're on the record in support of this project. We couldn't be more excited about what it will bring to our community in terms of housing choices. But with respect to the Metro District's application tonight and what we're asking you to decide, we certainly support their request. Our artists are really excited to be a part of beautifying a section of the trail right now that needs some color, needs some pizzazz, helps welcome people as they pass through that part of the community. I know that we have a long list of artists that are looking for partnerships just like this. So I want to thank Mr. Olenowitz for coming to us and asking if it was possible. We certainly talked to our creative community and said, is this something we would like to do? And it was met with enthusiastic support. So I hope you'll support it, and I look forward to making it happen if we move forward. Thanks so much.
Well said. Less than 2 minutes. Anybody else wish to speak? All right, seeing none, I will close public comment. And we have some questions. I'm just going to, real quick here, start with the counselors from Ward 2. So I'll have Coop, Vincent, Johnson, Abel. This is my list right now. Counselor Coop.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any questions, but I would just like to speak in following the process of what has been going on for however many months since you proposed this. And I also want the citizens to know that, Lakewood's tough. Lakewood's got your back, that this property was going to be used in a good way, that this was going to be a good deal for the citizens. And seriously, Mr. Olenowitz, you and your partners could have said, okay, we're out. We'll just do what we need to do. But I wanted you to know that I appreciate your, I don't want to use the term thinking out of the box, but that's what you have done this whole time, and thinking, what is a win-win situation for you get a wonderful amenity for your development, which people will enjoy and use. The rest of the community will get to use this amenity as well. And for the city to have the Metropolitan District oversee this, I can't imagine somebody having a problem with this. And in the way you've interacted with the neighborhood, Two Creeks, you've reached out to them, you and your partners, constantly to get their input on what they wanted to see in their neighborhood. So when they come here and say, this is what we have been asking for in our neighborhood, and you're giving it in such a way that everybody wins, I can't imagine somebody not wanting this type of setup. And I wish that all the developments in the city put the time in and the thought in making this a good situation for everybody. So needless to say, I would definitely support your project.
Councilor Vincent.
Councilor Coop said it well. I can't add much more to that, certainly. But it has been a very good process, and I think everybody on the council is very well aware that one of the things I've been very concerned about, a large part in the ward, is lighting and sidewalks and amenities for the neighborhood. And I do know that if you had not done this, not in my lifetime would sidewalks and lighting occur there on 11th. It's a safety thing, as far as I'm concerned, for the light rail and for the residents around there. So I certainly will be supporting that. And thank you. We've gotten something in the neighborhood I don't think we could have for a long, 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 long time without it.
Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Doug, it's a nice presentation. On your last slide, you showed there was a large power line. Could you please speak a little bit to that? Can they be buried, or are they going to be buried, or is that one of the larger ones that's there? Just talk to it, please.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. So as I mentioned, this has been a XL high tension power line easement for, I don't know for how long, but probably since before I was born. Those are not the types of lines that can be buried. They don't go away. And so we looked at that and tried to think about, well, how can you interact with them in a way that, and try to, give people something to focus on so that you're not focusing on that it goes away. And that's part of that placemaking idea about building community and kind of shifting the way that people perceive certain areas. So somebody had mentioned this as a park. It's not a park. It's a way for people to safely move through a community and move in a way that is more pleasing than it currently is right now. So safety and passage rather than hanging out and staying. But that was really the vision behind, kind of how this came together.
Just out of curiosity, are they pretty safe to be that close to on an ongoing basis? Because
Yeah.
I've heard different thought on that.
Yeah, well, I'm not a doctor or a scientist, but we have all of our development sits with outside of the required setbacks and easements that the power company requires, and based off of their study. So we believe that we've met all the requirements from a health and safety standpoint.
Councilor Abel.
Mr. Linowitz, when this first came to us, I was a bit concerned about a mixed-use opportunity being completely residential. The neighborhood wanted it, and I felt that I should vote that way. But looking at this, I will tell you that this is probably the best mix of uses we could have out there. So thank you for your creative design, and maybe we should consider adding the sort of amenity to our mixed-use menu. Thank you very much. I think it looks great.
Thank you.
Councilor Wickman.
There's some conversation about a park, and I understand it's not a park. But on the other hand, I'm looking at it, could we, and I'm getting ahead of the game here, at some time down the road, throw a few bucks in and kind of spruce it up and make it a pseudo park? Because I think it'd be a major asset to the community. Anyway, budget time's coming, so something to think about.
Councilor Gutwein.
We would welcome that discussion.
Thank you. This kind of high quality development and that adds assets to the community is what I hope we continue to attract in Lakewood. And I think this is beautiful. I love it, and I will definitely be supporting it. So thank you for, I mean, I just have to say again that you're doing a voluntary public improvement. So I think that's just really amazing. And I think a lot of times people think development is always bad, and it's not. So great job. Thank you.
Great. Well, I would just follow in with what's been said. And from the very start of your project, you've really taken it upon yourself to go out to the community and work hard and work on different things, challenging things, as Councilor Coop said. This isn't always the easiest process, but I do want to thank you for that. I want to thank our staff, Adrian and Stephen and Travis, for, kind of trying to have that out of the box type thinking in this way and making it work, because I know that it's been a challenge. So with that, I will certainly be supporting this, and I think I'm ready for a motion, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I move for the adoption of Ordinance 0-2017-10 on the second and final reading.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, please cast your votes. Did you wish to speak? Could you vote, please?
I did. Oh. Sorry.
Keeping you in suspense. Display. 10 ayes, 0 nays. Congratulations. Thank you all for coming out. All right. Will the clerk please read item 10?
Item 10, Ordinance 2017-11, authorizing repairs on or replacement of city property damaged as a result of the May 8th, 2017 hailstorm, including a supplemental appropriation to the 2017 original budget.
All right. So we do not have a staff presentation. Are there any questions from the council? All right. Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. Nobody's signed up to speak. Anybody wish to speak? Seeing none, I will close public comment and ask for a motion.
Mayor, I move for the adoption of Ordinance 2017-11 on second and final reading.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, please cast your votes. Maybe. All right, and that passes 10 ayes, 0 nays. Thank you very much. Sorry, Mr. Dolan. That was an uneventful night for you. All right. Will the clerk please read item 11 into the record?
Item 11, Ordinance 2017-12, amending Chapter 5.38 of the Lakewood Municipal Code to eliminate the prohibition on the issuance of hotel and restaurant liquor licenses to establishments located within 500 feet of a school.
Great. All right, we don't have a presentation on this because we had an ACIC report, which was very well done, and I will now open the public comment. And Ms. Sandoval, come on down. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Jeanette Sandoval, and I am the daughter of Lucino Sandoval. He's the owner of Las Fuentes Mexican Restaurant, located on Alameda, across the street from Green Mountain High School. But so, unfortunately, the loss of the liquor license was a big impact on our bottom line, and it's making it difficult to get by. We have always strived to be a good neighbor within our community. We have developed a relationship with the principal and school resource officer at Green Mountain High School, and we try to serve the student community by offering student lunch special for $5 that they are generally required to take out of the restaurant. And we monitor student behavior in the vicinity of our restaurant, and we'll call the resource officer if we observe problematic behavior such as smoking or vaping. We understand the issues around teen drinking and will be even more vigilant about it because of our proximity to the school. We are asking that you approve the ordinance before you today that will allow our restaurant to reapply for a liquor license at this location. Thank you for your consideration and moving this ordinance along so quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out. That's it. That's signed up. Anybody else wish to speak? Mr. Mace, come on down. Welcome back.
Hopefully this will be the last time I speak tonight.
It will be. This is your last opportunity. Nothing else left.
Okay. I want to speak on this issue because I'm concerned with the students over at Green Mountain High School. I am a former Green Mountain High School student, and 17 years ago we had the same issue. So if council approves this, there will be a lot of people, including myself, very, very, very angry. This is near a high school. This does not need to be approved at this time. I think council should take it under study session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Yep. Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Rhonda Peters. I think you all know me. I guess my question is, does this change the ordinance for the entire city? So I'm maybe not as concerned about this specific need that it's looked at being changed for, but I'm concerned about other parts of the city, in other wards and other districts near schools. And I guess I'm just interested to know a little bit more, maybe as the previous speaker requested a study session, I just wonder what the impact could be in other areas. And then it had said for restaurants and hotels, does this mean that a restaurant, say like Tilted Kilt or Hooters, could be within 500 feet of a school? Because it seems like if it's an ordinance, it's an all or nothing. So I'm wondering if there's a way to accommodate the request without changing it broadly, and just that folks consider the unintended consequences and maybe do something to mitigate those. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Ms. Duffy? I think you might know a little bit about this process.
Yes, we worked on it long and hard. And if you do have the information that was presented to you before all the research we did look at what other schools might be impacted and how that could affect them. We also looked at, with the growth, with the infill, it could hinder issues within our community to have this restriction for hotels. We did a lot of research, talked to a lot of high school principals. It's funny, she should bring up Hooters. Hooters was directly across the street from the Lakewood High School student parking lot. And when I contacted the principal at Lakewood High School, she pointed that out. And on the other issues, she said, and by the way, Diane, you do know that all of our students drive. That's why we have the other problem. So we did address most of those issues. So I hope you do approve this.
Thank you. Ms. Kellen? Okay. Anybody else? All right. I'm going to close public comment, and I'd ask for a motion, please.
I move for the adoption of Ordinance 0-2017-12 on second and final reading.
I second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Looks like there's some comments, and I'll just jump in, and I appreciate the comments that we heard. When we looked at this issue, we knew that we couldn't just look at one restaurant in particular and change the rules for one. And so that's partly why we got to this point with the folks here who are, have waited a long time. But it was important that we looked at the whole class. And if we were going to make a change, then we'd make that change based on that whole class of licensing. And it's something I think our other communities have done. I think Denver's done it, and we had a lot of research from that. So I am perfectly comfortable, I think, with the research that's been done from our ACIC and the recommendation to support this going forward. Councilor Gutwein?
Thanks. I just also wanted to say safety of our students is incredibly important to me, one of the biggest priorities that I have. And after the presentation from the ACIC, I feel more than comfortable that we will not be impacting the safety of our kids with restaurant and hotel alcohol licensing. We looked at a lot of the different examples of how you might see impact if you had liquor stores, but with hotels and restaurants, there was no safety concern found. So I feel very comfortable with this, and I will be voting to support it. Thank you.
Councilor Wickman?
I hate to be repetitious, but since it's in my ward, I feel like I have to jump in. Obviously, I'm very concerned about safety to our youth as well, but we've studied this very clearly, and if it was a package store or something like that, it'd be a different story. But I am convinced that hotels and restaurants don't represent a threat to our youth anywhere in the city, and so therefore I'll be supporting it wholeheartedly.
Councilor Franks?
To weigh in as well. I really got my level of comfort when we kind of saw the amount of enforcement. We have folks going out there, we have them checking to make sure that, that they're monitoring and no one's selling to underage. So that's what really got my level of comfort up. And so I too will be supporting this.
All right. So with that motion and a second, no other lights are on. Would you please cast your votes? And that passes 10 ayes, 0 nays. Congratulations. Next up, general business.
There is none.
Okay.